Today we're making a classic, and some would argue the best soup out there. We are making French onion soup, or as they call it in France, the French onion soup. I think I got that correct. While this is not a 30-minute soup by any means, it really is worth it. For a cold, rainy day, you cannot beat the savory, sweet flavors from that soup with that funky cheese on top. So without further ado, let's get cooking. This recipe is all about the onions, so we're going to use a ton of them. We're going to use 9 medium to large yellow onions and 4 shallots. Next, we're going to do a standard prep of the onions, cutting off both ends and slicing them right down the middle, top to bottom, to create 2 equal halves. We're going to cut our onions lengthwise, or what is referred to as pole to pole, and the reason we do that is it really just allows that onion to melt into our final soup a little bit easier. As you can see, I'm definitely cutting these onions on the thinner side. If you want them to be chunkier, cut them a little bit thicker. The biggest thing is we need consistency because we want these onions to cook at the same rate. Now we're going to focus on our shallots. The prep is pretty much the same as our yellow onions. The biggest difference is how we slice these. Instead of going pole to pole or lengthwise, we're going to go crosswise, and really that is just due to the texture and the mouthfeel in our final soup. In a 6-quart pot, preferably a Dutch oven, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and we're going to mix it around and let that butter melt. Once the butter is fully melted, we're going to take all of our onions and add them directly to the pot. We're going to do our best not to miss when we're adding them, but nothing a little editing can't fix. And to season our onions, we're going to add a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper and about 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. We're going to give it a really nice mix, getting them fully covered in butter, oil, salt, and pepper, and then we're going to throw a lid on for about 20 to 25 minutes, letting the steam do a little of the heavy lifting for us. As you can see, those onions are really starting to break down, soften up, and release those sugars. We're going to keep the lid off and continue stirring for another 25 to 30 minutes until the onions turn a darker brown and an onion fond starts to develop on the bottom of the pot. Make sure you have that because that is a ton of flavor. We're then going to add 1/3 cup of cognac to add additional flavor and to help deglaze the pot, using our wooden spoon to help release all of the flavorful bits off of the bottom. Then to add a nice kick of savory umami flavor, we're adding 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 1/2 cup of sherry for a little sweet acidity, and then 2 teaspoons of fresh cracked pepper, 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. Give it a nice mix and let the sherry cook down for a few minutes until fully reduced, and there you go. Those might be the best looking caramelized onions I've ever seen. We're then going to add 8 cups of the best beef stock you can get your hands on. I encourage you to make it at home if you can. It is super simple, but makes a huge difference. Toss in 1 bunch of fresh thyme, 2 bay leaves, and then let simmer for 30 minutes while it slightly reduces. Since we just added a ton of unsalted liquid, we're going to add a couple solid pinches of kosher salt. Give it a nice stir, and then it's time to taste, and then adjust your seasonings as you see fit. Super important to taste, don't just follow the recipe. And then moving on to our croutons. We're going to use a sourdough, but you'll often see folks use baguette slices or discs. And I'd like to encourage you to give the sourdough a try. It adds a subtle but really nice acidic flavor to our end dish. We're going to slice the bread into crouton shapes versus discs, and that just leaves you with a much easier way to get a little bit of toasty bread in each bite. To season our croutons, we're going to toss them all into a bowl, adding in 2 tablespoons of olive oil, fresh black pepper, kosher salt, garlic powder, and fresh thyme. Give it a nice mix to get everything nice and coated, and then onto a baking sheet. We're then going to toss our baking sheet into a preheated 350-degree oven for about 5 to 7 minutes or until golden brown. And there you have it, that's our super crunchy, flavorful crouton. And for the iconic blanket of melted cheese, we're using a French gruyere, which not only melts insanely well, but adds an awesome level of funk to our already rich soup. Simply grate it on the largest grate, and that's it. We've got our cheese ready. I'm using the traditional French onion style crock, but feel free to use any oven safe bowl, but just make sure it really is oven safe. Using a ladle, we're going to fill our bowl up with our soup, leaving just enough room at the top for our croutons and our cheese. Load up your soup with a bunch of croutons. Make sure not to leave any uncovered areas. It's time for cheese. We need to pile this cheese super high. I know it looks like a ton, but it is necessary to get that perfectly melted layer. In order to get that golden brown cheese, we need to place our bowl, while on a baking sheet, into an oven set to broil.
It shouldn't take more than a few minutes to get that perfect level of golden brown. And my God, if that is not the most beautiful French onion soup you have ever seen in your life.
Oh my God, there's so much onions here, it's freaking nuts. I think this entire thing is all caramelized onions. That's rich. I mean, we'll start it off with that. That's rich. But that is incredible. So many layers of flavor involved there. So many layers. Sweet, salty, funky. Got the nice chew from the crouton. A little bit of crunch from it too, towards the top where it kind of broiled. Unbelievable.